So we have to take a time machine and go all the way back to the beginning. So you're clearly passionate about music. Where did this love of music come from? And is there maybe an earliest musical memory that jumps out at you?
I would say, people always ask, who's your biggest musical influence? And I think like, well, I guess the Beatles, because that was, and then I think about other acts, but really, I would say my musical influence is my father. He was not a musician, but he was a big music fan, and we always had a stereo and albums, and he always had a reel-to-reel tape deck, and he made mixtapes. And he knew someone at the radio station, so he would borrow singles a lot. And so I grew up listening to these mixtapes, and if back then you couldn't get better. It's not like we had a gazillion-dollar stereo, but when you have a half decent turntable and you record it onto quarter-inch tape at 3 3/4, you get this beautiful tape compression, so everything sounds amazing. So I just grew up listening to music all the time. Greg Norrie and I, we've known each other since we were infants. Our parents used to share a ski chalet, and Greg and I used to, when we were 7 or 8 years old, we used to sleep in the same bed, and it was very thin walls, and we were right above the stereo. So we basically go to sleep listening to this same music, a lot of CCR, a lot of Beatles, kind of early country, kind of early 70s singer-songwriter stuff.
Your dad was making mixtapes before it was easy to make mixtapes with CD.
Exactly.
He's a pioneer in that field. So you mentioned some of the artists you heard, the Beatles, your parents would play CCR, some of the country stuff. Is there any other of that early music that jumped out to you when you were a kid?
There was one particular mixtape, and it had a whole bunch of great songs on it, and it had Heart of Gold on it by Neil Young. And I remember thinking, because I didn't like country when I was a kid, so I didn't like that sound of that country steel guitar. But on Heart of Gold, there was something about it. I remember thinking, like, what is this sound? What is going on? It kind of filled my head, and it was kind of like, what is going on? I don't understand what's going on, but it's amazing.
Yeah, it's a little less country, a little more folky, a little more pop elements to it. Yeah.
And I think like so many people around my age, I was a Beatles fanatic when I was 8, 9, 10, 11 years old. So that was kind of my whole world.
And what do you think it was about the Beatles? I mean, obviously they have some of the greatest songs of all time. Is it the harmonies? Is it the look? What is it about the Beatles that you remember?
Oh, I think it's the Beatles just made great records. They made great recordings. The songs were great. The singers were great. It was everything.
They were the full package.
Full package.
So that was you becoming a fan of music, but how did you become a musician? So how did you gravitate towards the guitar? And then I'm assuming singing came later than the guitar. That's usually what happens.
Yeah. When I was about 8 or 9, my parents said, "Do you want to learn an instrument?" And I said, "Yeah, I want to learn the guitar." So they bought me a really cheap guitar, and I took classical guitar lessons for years with this guy called Dennis McGregor here in Sault Ste. Marie. And I was not very good. I was really good at sight reading and reading music, but I was not good at practicing. I was not into classical music. And I didn't start singing till I was probably 16 or 17 or 18. And the first rock band I was in high school was terrible, and I was awful. Yet I'm a late bloomer.
Did you enjoy those guitar lessons, or not so much because it was classical?
Yeah, I did. I don't remember looking forward to them. I do remember remember I would go to summer camp, and a counselor one year was playing Stairway to Heaven on his acoustic guitar. And I looked at that and I thought, what is going on? Well, how is that even possible? And I remember my guitar teacher gave me the sheet music to Stairway to Heaven. I was like, what? Like a mortal can play this?
That's awesome. Yeah, Stairway to Heaven is like a gateway drug for most guitarists in the beginning, for
Yeah.
sure.
And it seemed like when I was a kid, any kind of I have these strong memories of seeing someone playing. Like I think the first time I saw someone, playing electric guitar, not seeing a band, but I think he was playing a BTO song, and he was playing the chords, and I was like, how are you doing that? Like it sounds just like the record. I mean, it probably didn't, but to me, it just sounded like how is that possible?
Did he have distortion going and everything?
I don't even think that much distortion, just like the sound of electric guitar right beside you, just like, whoa.
When you started singing, did you have the first few moments where you're already playing guitar and you decide, you know what, I want to try being a singer, and you realize you can't play guitar and sing at the same time? Like it's two different parts of the brain that need to be separated at first. Did you get that at all?
I didn't have that much problem with that. I did have that exactly with harmonica. I used to be a ski racer, and I was not very good, but I hung around people that were good, that were on the Northern Ontario division.
Sorry, I have to say that's something that's dangerous to not be good at. Yeah.
Well, I don't think I was fast enough to be dangerous. You know how people, they hit the poles and the poles go rattle. I never hit a pole in my life.
That's funny.
So one of the Northern Ontario division guys was John Critchley. And when these guys would come into town, we would all hang out. So we were hanging out at someone's ski chalet, and John had his guitar and a harmonica, and he was singing and playing harmonica. And I remember thinking to myself, I gotta get moving here. Like he's singing and playing harmonica. I gotta do that. So I remember I got a harmonica with a rack, and I would spend all day playing Heart of Gold on the harmonica with the rack, and just like you said, sat down, played the guitar, and then it was like my hands exploded. It just I could not multitask.
Was Neil, so you mentioned Heart of Gold. So was it Neil Young and maybe Bob Dylan that got you interested in the harmonica?
Yeah, I would say, yeah.
And your friend?
I wasn't into Dylan yet, but I would say Neil Young taught me how to sing, and that's partly why I kind of sound like Neil Young. I think it's physiology as well. But
you mentioned that when you first started, you were in a band and you weren't great. What was the name of that band? And were you in a bunch of bands before Treble Charger?
Yeah, we had a cover band in high school called Ziggy Freud. It was not a good band. I think we only had one or two gigs. Then we kind of, that was kind of a rock band. Then we had more of a like Southern rock, rootsy country rock band called East Side, I think.
These are good band names so far.
And then Greg and I started just playing the two of us acoustically. We'd do a lot of like Simon and Garfunkel and Neil Young and stuff with harmonies in it.
Look at that. We got a little a show. We always end up with cats and dogs on the show. So
yeah.
What's your cat's name? Just so we're all.
Her name is Tiny Kitten.
Tiny Kitten?
Yeah.
That is a solid name. You're as good as naming your animals as you are naming bands. So
thank you.
That's funny.